Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it's your first time. This week we've got another discussion for you. And this discussion is going to be focused around a certain year. That year is the year the Hubble telescope was launched, the USSR collapsed, the Gulf War was raging, the Pittsburgh Penguins won the Stanley Cup, Terminator 2 and Home Alone were dominating the movie theaters, but more importantly, that was the year I was born. So because of that, we are going to take a look at my 5 favorite albums from the year 1991. Now, there might be a little bit of dispute here, because I know I left out some of your favorite albums, but don't worry, there'll be a notable mention at the end. And easily, any one of these albums in the notable mentions could have replaced anything on the main list. Don't be fooled. There was a lot of good music released that year. It was very hard to make this list. But anyway, let's get going. So the first one on my list, actually, you know what? Let's start with something different because I started with that band last time. A little foreshadowing if you've seen my last video. So let's start with Slave to the Grind by Skid Row. Obviously, the title track, Slave to the Grind, is a killer track. Slave to the Grind is the heavier follow-up to their debut album. And honestly, it feels a little bit ahead of its time. Like I said, it's got a heavier feel to it, but it also has a bit more of a modern metal sound. You can definitely begin to hear that transition into the metal sound that, still dominates the airwaves today. You can definitely start seeing Skid Row actually being one of the bands at the forefront of that, which is kind of surprising. They're not really a band you would associate with that. Mostly they get associated with the hair metal movement. But you can definitely hear it in their music, especially in songs like Monkey Business. Okay, I guess Monkey Business was kind of a bad example. That one's more a callback to their hair metal roots. But the title track, for instance, you can begin to hear that driving metal sound that began to, characterize metal in the 90s, stuff like Pantera. They've got a very similar sound. Sebastian Bach definitely takes it more to that hair metal extreme, but the rest of the band, like the instrumentals behind it, you can definitely hear that progression towards heavier music. So the next album we're going to do is going to be For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge by Van Halen. Eddie very much speaks for himself. If you're watching this video, you know who Eddie Van Halen is, and it's very hard for me to say anything that, you don't already know. Some of my favorite tracks off this are Pound Cake. That's actually was the first track I heard off this album. Absolutely iconic. Eddie's use of the drill is just, it's innovative, it's masterful, it's great. It sounds good. You really can't go wrong there. The other song everybody is probably really familiar with is Right Now, and that's what I think is the big single off this album. Obviously, the key line in that song is absolutely intoxicating. It's just, for me, it's what makes the song. But if you listen to songs outside of Pound Cake and Right Now, stuff like Pleasure Dome, you start to hear that the album's a little more experimental than normal Van Halen. It's not just straight rock and roll. It's not just straight hair metal. There's a little bit of proggy getting tongue-tied. There's a little bit of proggy experimentation going on there, and I don't know, it's really refreshing. Again, use of the drill, very experimental, proggy. So, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge by Van Halen, fantastic album. My third favorite album from the year I was born is going to be Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper. And this might be disputed by a lot of you in the comments because at first glance, it does look like one of the weaker albums on this list. However, if you take a deeper look at the album, Alice Cooper recruits just like a super group of help for almost every song. It's ridiculous. I believe Ozzy's on it at one point, Slash is on it, Vinnie Moore's on a couple songs, Hurricane Years and Dirty Dreams, and if you've ever heard Vinnie Moore, he's a phenomenal guitarist. If not, it's a good place to start checking him out because you probably like Alice Cooper. Again, other notable songs, Feed My Frankenstein. You may have heard it before, but you may not be aware that it was a collaboration between Alice Cooper, Steve Vai, and Joe Satriani, which, you know, two of my favorite guitarists of all time. What more could I ask for? So Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper, phenomenal album, maybe a tad underrated as far as albums from this year go. That's why I included it on this list. So check it out if you haven't. Again, it's a little bit more of a refined sound than, you know, traditional rock and roll albums from Alice Cooper. You can definitely tell there's a higher level of production here, but it's in a good way. It's not a bad thing. Alright, so my fourth album from the year I was born is going to be the Black Album by Metallica. And again, if you watch this video, you've probably heard the Black Album 100 times. Songs like Enter Sandman are absolute classics. Other noticeable parts about this album are the fact that this is widely accepted as the first album where Cliff Burton's influence isn't felt. Even though Injustice for All is the first album where Cliff Burton, you know, isn't on, obviously because of his death. This is widely talked about as the first album where his influence is no longer felt and they're moving in their own direction. And you can kind of see that, and it may be because Cliff's not there, but it also may have to do with their new producer, Bob Rock. And, you know, if you've seen Some Kind of Monster, you know about Bob Rock. Him and the band have had, you know, many clashes. Arguably for the better, because if you look at the Black Album, songs like Enter Sandman, Sad But True, they're classics. They're pretty much known as Metallica's best songs. Like, if you go through and name off what you think are Metallica's most successful songs, you know, the songs that have sold the most, they're almost all on this album. It's ridiculous. So, for better or worse, working with Bob Rock certainly helped them out there. But they also, again, like Slave to the Grind, this is also another noticeable turn in the metal scene where you can see things moving in a heavier direction. If you listen to the songs like Don't Tread on Me, they're a lot slower, heavier. You can tell metal's moving in a new direction. They're moving away from the glam, even though Metallica was never a glam band, but you can just hear the music scene as a whole starting to move into a new area, and it's pretty cool in my opinion. So last but not least, we've got an album from another one of my favorite bands. And this may be cheating a little, some of you may rag on me for that. I'm going to pick the Use Your Illusion double disc by Guns N' Roses. Some people like to talk about them as separate albums. I'm going to talk about them as one album because I think they deserve to be talked about as one album. Right from the get-go on this album, you're hit with songs like Right Next Door to Hell, Dust and Bones. It hooks you right in. If you've ever heard the first few songs on disc 1 of Use Your Illusion, it immediately makes you want to listen to the rest of the album. It's great. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't, although again, this is a fairly popular album and you've all probably heard of this and listened to it. Alright, the other thing about this album is really, at least in my opinion, you know, some people like to say the Appetite for Destruction era is kind of peak Guns N' Roses. For me, this is peak Guns N' Roses. You can tell everybody's just at the height of their musicianship, at least the height of their musicianship collectively together. The band's experiencing rapid growth. There's keyboardists and backup singers and all kinds of goodness. It's really a phenomenal album. Songs like Live and Let Die, it's another phenomenal cover, which again, if you hadn't heard the original Wings Paul McCartney version, you probably wouldn't know that this wasn't a Guns N' Roses song. They do it that well. It's just really top-notch. Again, November Rain is the big single on this album. I'm sure we've all heard that. You know, seen the video with Slash soloing in the desert. Other fantastic songs, Civil War, Knocking on Heaven's Door, another fantastic cover, which again, if you never heard the original, you would probably think this was a Guns N' Roses song. They just do it that well. It's crazy. This band is phenomenal at writing their own original music, but they're also phenomenal at covering songs, and I feel like that's just really rare. You don't see a lot of that in my opinion. So yeah, that being said, those are 5 of my favorite albums from the year 1991, the year I was born. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge by Van Halen, Slave to the Grind by Skid Row, Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper, Use Your Illusion by Guns N' Roses, and the Black Album by Metallica. Again, I said I'd have some notables, and the notables for this year are obviously Nevermind by Nirvana, and I'm sure pretty much everybody is screaming at the screen right now that I didn't include Nevermind, especially over stuff like Slave to the Grind or Hey Stupid, but Nevermind just wasn't as big of an influence on my musical taste as those two albums, so it's in the notable mentions. As is 10 by the band Pearl Jam. Honestly, the one song that really the one album that really kind of pained me to put on the notable list was Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That album, front to back, it's just a masterpiece. And honestly, I probably should have included it over maybe like Hey Stupid, but I stand by my original choices. A couple other notable mentions are Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, which is pretty much still considered the pinnacle of shoegaze as far as I know. I don't know, maybe somebody knows otherwise. Tell me in the comments. And the last notable mention will be Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden. So there we have it. There's 5 of my favorite albums from the year 1991, plus notable mentions. I hope you liked this video. Please comment. Tell me what albums you liked, what albums you didn't like, what you may have included. Tell me what your top 5 are from the year 1991. Maybe you want to tell me the top 5 from the year you were born. Whatever it is, let's have a discussion in the comments. That's what these videos are for. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you had a good time.